This is Angler's Perspective, brought to you by Striker, JT Outdoor Products, Great Lakes Finesse, Bucked Up, and Okuma. Welcome to Angler's Perspective. I'm Grant Farmer, your host, and this is episode 1. Supposed to be episode 2, but I got the flu last week, so that did not happen. Everything got postponed and pushed back. I appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I know that was not the most ideal thing in the world. Anytime you do any kind of a big drop, you expect it to be on time. So I do apologize about that, and I appreciate everybody tuning in today. With that being said, I'm really excited about the guest that I have on this week. He's a buddy of mine, owns an awesome up-and-coming tackle company that is really starting to take off. He was at the Bassmasters Classic this past week, had a booth for the first time, and man, did they crush it. His name's Hunter. He is the owner of LS Lures. I will put their link in the comments and in the bio. Get on over there. Take a look at what he's got. He's got something for everybody. Whether you're a bass angler, a walleye angler, he's making custom-made jigs, and they are the creme de la creme, the chef's kiss, if I may say so myself, when it comes to jigs. On that note, please like, subscribe, share. You're going to hear me say that every single time when we start one of these things. It helps make the algorithm go round, and the more people this reaches, the better it is. We want fans. Fans are good. On that note, here's Hunter. There we go. All right, I got Hunter on finally now. We went through a couple technical difficulties trying to get this thing figured out. Gotta love the first episode. Hunter, tell us about yourself, man. How you been?
Good, dude. Busy. We just got back from the Classic. It was kind of a hectic weekend having a booth there, and first booth there ever. So a lot of things, a big learning curve on that one. A lot of fun trying to get down there. You know, we're from Nebraska, and it's about a 10.5-hour drive and got hit by that huge snowstorm right as we were getting ready to leave. So that was a ton of fun, but it was a good Classic. We had a good time, met a lot of great people, sold a ton of jigs, which was good. So can't really complain there, but
no, selling product is never a bad thing.
No.
Dude, I didn't even know you guys got hit with a snowstorm.
Dude, nightmare. Like, woke up. So by the time we got done kind of getting all of our stuff together, it was like 2 a.m. and we checked the weather and saw that there was this massive front coming through. And I was in Lincoln, like staged with my buddy that I was going down with. And I'm from Kearney, 2 hours west, and Kearney was getting like whiteout conditions. And so we were like, oh, this isn't going to be fun for us. We took like a 2-hour nap, and when we woke up at 4, the hail had hit, and so we like ran, dumped everything in the truck, and got on the road. And by the time we reached the interstate, they'd closed it down. So we just kind of jumped around until we found a highway we could head south on, and just barely missed it. But yeah, my buddy had like a 6-foot drift in front of his house, and everything was just kind of a nightmare here. So really glad we made it down to Texas. It was a little bit nicer down there.
Well, outside of the 40 to 50 mile per
hour.
Yeah,
I'd take that.
Trey McKinney not being able to get his boat on.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Dude, you guys' booth turned out awesome, though. When you sent me the picture of it, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was different. I feel like most of the booths there, you know, you walk around and they're all either set up by the people that work for the venue, or like it's the same stuff you can all order. And I was like, that's the last thing I want. Like, we're going to kind of embrace the like garage company style, you know. So we built it all out of pallet wood we got from a dump, and like we were the only people drilling there during setup. Like, we're sitting there putting boards together and making all this noise, and had a bunch of folks come out and check on us because we're like trying to hoist this box up and get it stabilized. And it was good. It turned out all right. Like, we got a bunch of compliments on that, and I don't think we'll ever really go away from that. Like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to try and pretend to be something we're not, you know, but it turned out real good. It drew some eyes.
Well, that's the thing. It fits the vibe for you guys' company because like what you guys are doing, For those of you that don't know, okay, Hunter is one of the owners of LS Lures.
The only owner now. The only
The
owner.
only owner.
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yeah.
Sole owner now.
Solo owner.
Okay. Wow.
Buddy got a really good job offer, and he was like, "Man, I think I got to do this," and got out, and so now it's just me kicking it.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you guys get a chance to go over to his website, he's got some incredible stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the product here, and like, I mean, it. The thing is what you're doing. It's a work of art. Like I've tried dabbling with it. Not my forte. I will gladly build a boat any day of the week, but doing that,
Yeah, it's tough, man, and it takes a lot of time. Like this is year 5. We started with $50 in a college class 5 years ago, and basically we were in an entrepreneurship program, and they were like, "Hey, like we're gonna give you $50, start a company, and you're graded based on how well it does." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what the heck I'm gonna do that I'm good at, but I like flipping a jig around." Like I had some molds I got in high school, and I was just terrible at it. Like you said, like there's a lot more that goes into it of like making them look good and doing the right things there. And so I was like, well, we give it a shot, you know? And so we started making like 5 or 10 jigs in a batch and trying to pawn those off to our buddies. And then you'd get that money and build 20 and try and sell them. And now to like making a couple thousand and showing up at the Bassmaster Classic Expo and stuff. It's been a crazy journey. And like, I know I want to work in the industry. I've always known that, and like tried to do a couple other things career wise. And this was just always like in the back of my head, just crying to get out. So I figured I was young and stupid enough. I went full time with it in the fall, and it's been crazy. Like it's been so cool to see the company grow and just like, I don't know, evolve, I suppose, like just learning all the different tricks of the trade and how to market and how to do all that stuff to like let people know we even exist. And now we've got like a whole new lineup of product that's coming out in May, like working on all the prototypes and new designs now. So it's been really cool. It's growing like a weed. It's been kind of nuts. Like I don't sleep a whole lot, but it's been really neat.
well, and that's one thing I think we're starting to see the industry shift towards a little bit is not so many big box companies necessarily when it comes to baits, but you're seeing those handcrafted baits that more and more time is put in and more
Yeah.
efforts put in to get that little nuance,
Mm-hmm. Well,
whether it's a specific movement or anything like that, or how the bait sits in the water column. Oh, think we lost him there.
good.
Oh, there we
Am I
go.
back?
There we go. Yep, you're back. Just a
Sorry, I got
pause
a
for
phone call.
dramatic
Apparently
effect.
that. No, I think you're 100% right there on that. I really do think, like you said, there's so many companies now that are springing up and gaining a lot of traction, and I think part of that is like the fish aren't getting any dumber, you know, and like it seems like there's a war going on right now with all these big companies of somebody releases one bait that looks a certain way, and then
Yeah.
every major company across the board makes the same thing with a different name on it, you know, and then somebody makes something else, and then everybody makes the same thing, and all these littler companies are like actually making some serious improvements and doing the little things that like guys can tell like there's a difference, you know, like there's a big difference. And especially watching fish on scope now, like there's no excuse for having a bad day. Like you either got to figure out how to make those fish eat or find that little detail that they want, or you know, you're just going to be looking at them all day. So
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head. It's pretty much okay, whatever Japan comes out with, we're just gonna copy and paste that here
yeah,
real quick. But
yeah. How
not
many versions of a mag draft are there right
yeah.
now?
Oh
Like,
my gosh, man. And the thing is, a lot of them catch fish.
yeah, and they're all great. I'm not saying they
And then
don't catch fish. I'm just
some
saying
of
that
them are
it's
paperweights, but
yeah, yeah. I'm not saying they don't catch fish. I'm just saying like it's just a copy and pasting, and a lot of these smaller companies are really changing the game right now. You look at like you said, those little nuanced things of the way that a jig head rolls or a skirt flares or like the way that something's tied, like a color scheme, you know, like all of our products. We had so many people this weekend ask us like, how did you come up with the skirts, like the schemes of your skirts and how you like designed all that. And basically it was just like, I want to be better, right? Like I don't want to look at a jig that Strike King makes and say, okay, well, I'll just do exactly that. Like, you can go buy that on the shelf anywhere. I need to have some reason that guys are going to buy my product. So all of our jig skirts reflect that of like, you can't really get them anywhere else. Like, we have all
Yeah.
the industry standards. Like, you can still buy a black and blue jig, but like, we do all the little things that make it just different enough to where, like, if you do get on that weird bite, like a lot of fish are going to eat a black and blue jig wherever, but every now and
Yep.
then, you know, you get on that one bite where it's like, okay, they're only eating this. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Like,
that one detail, you know, that like this is what they're keyed in on. And you can go and flip behind a guy that's not catching shit flipping a jig, and you can throw whatever color that we make that you can't get anywhere else, and you fill a 15-20 pound sack pretty easy, you know. So
well, and the whole thing is too, I mean, if you look at like where we've grown up fishing, where we've cut our teeth,
mm-hmm.
I mean, Illinois, it was dirty water fishing. Like,
Yeah.
congratulations, you're throwing black and blue, and everything looks black and blue anyway
Yep.
as soon as you put it in a chocolate milk.
Yep.
Now, I mean, you come up here up north, and you're dealing with that clear water situation. All right,
Mm-hmm.
if you got a bluegill spawn going on, if you got a shad spawn going on, it better look just like the real thing, or they ain't
Oh
even
yeah.
gonna touch it.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, especially like up north with the clean water and down south with the pressure. Like, I fished for the Huskers for 4 years, and jumping down to some of those lakes, like when we fished Pickwick for the national championship, like we caught almost all of our fish flipping a really tiny flipping jig that we make, and a mop jig that's made out of living rubber. That it's a hybrid skirt that we do. It's different. And we fished around a lot of teams all week, and we caught a lot of fish in the same areas doing stuff that like they just don't see, you know, like it's just, it looks different and it gets more bites that way. So,
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's all about thinking outside the box because
mm-hmm.
here's the easiest way I can describe it. Okay, if I'm sitting in the front row of class and every single day the teacher comes and hits me in the head with the book,
Yeah.
what do you think I'm going to do? Either I'm
Yeah.
going to learn to move, I'm going to go to the back row or out in no man's land where we're finding some of these fish with live scope now,
Yep.
or I'm just not going to look at a book ever again.
Right.
Like, at a certain point, the redundancy that has been there, because I mean, we've all been fishing for this industry's been going on since the 60s.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's really when bass fishing kind of took off. So if you look at
Mm-hmm.
it, the innovation over that time in the last 20, 30 years, it's really been the same general baits outside of the fact that the chatterbait came along
Mm-hmm.
and we saw how that changed the industry. And then you had the Alabama rig and like little things like that. But I don't think anybody's really dove into the realistic aspect of things,
Right.
really dialing in. And I think that's where Japan has so much influence because they don't have that many lakes out there.
Yeah.
Like you have Biwa and it's got monsters in it,
Yep.
but at the end of the day, those fish get so much pressure that they're smart.
Yeah. There's a
You
lot
know,
of books getting thrown at them.
exactly. Yeah, every single textbook you can imagine on fishing, Randy Blockett 101.
Yeah.
So on that note, one of the conversations that's been kind of out there is like surrounding the classic this year. Like, how was the attendance? You said that was the first one you've had a booth at. Like, what did you see from your perspective?
Yeah. Just talking to folks there. So we got kind of put on an island. We were on the second floor in the hallway, but we could see in. There's a lot of people there. There was a lot of people there. They said downstairs was pretty much shoulder to shoulder. I've got a buddy who works for Power Pole, and he said it was insane. And even just looking upstairs, like just hordes of people that like were just flooding along. And we got most of the ones that needed some breathing air and stuff like that to kick out. So attendance wise, it looked pretty dang good. It looked pretty dang good there, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, last year, like when we were hanging out at Grand Lake and everything at that classic, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a packed madhouse.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I think where a lot of people have been diving into the attendance issues, so to speak, was more on the actual weigh-in side of things.
Yeah, we
But
saw a huge drop once you started getting to be that time where, like, by the end of it, it was just the vendors walking around, like, chit
yeah,
chatting. And so that was kind of a pain. You know, they had the shuttle, everything to get to the weigh in was fine as far as the shuttles. And I heard a lot of complaints about the parking. But the biggest thing I think was there was a pretty big drop in how many people were in there within 2 hours of the weigh in there. So that made
exactly.
things kind of
And
tricky too.
And the weigh-in and the expo, weren't they about like 2.5 miles apart or something like that, where it wasn't necessarily just walking distance?
No, it was a trek.
Yeah. And I mean, that last year in Tulsa, I mean, that was a big difference. You could literally go from the expo, you could be at the weigh-in in
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yep.
I think the other thing was too, with them having to go to the ticket sales side of things, even though it was a free ticket,
Yep.
which don't even get me started on my opinion on that. Um, the thing was is that like having that ticket there as well and having to go through the hassle of getting the ticket,
Yep.
I think that kind of deterred some people from actually going to the weigh-in. Not to mention the
Yep.
fact that it's a 5 hour weigh-in on day one, and at the end of the day, everybody's just kind of waiting for day three because
Yep.
that's when the trophy actually gets hoisted.
Yep.
But I mean,
Yeah.
to hear that the sales were up, that's a big step in the right direction for the industry.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it was really good as far as how many people were there, and we heard a lot of folks say that. I mean, I'd suppose something's probably got to get done to like let people know there is an upstairs, because we had a lot of folks coming in that didn't know, and whether that's like improper signing or something like that. Like, there's a lot of folks that said we had no idea this was even up here. So it took a while the first day to see any traffic upstairs, just because everyone was downstairs and nobody really wants to start at the top and work down.
Right.
But then after that, like later in the second day and the third day, like you got a lot of those folks that they'd been there every day so far, and really were starting to kind of hit everything there, which was really good.
So how far away were you guys from the absolute giant line that was at Cast King where they were giving out free rods?
So we couldn't see Cast King, but I've got some buddies at Powerhouse that said it was insane.
Oh my gosh.
Said it was insane.
Sounds like Al hit the nail on the head with that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Well, everybody walking around had a Cast King bag and a rod. Like,
Oh my gosh.
everybody had one. Like, it'd be stupid not to go get one.
Dude, and that's the thing. That's marketing 101. Kind
Yeah.
of like what we talked about a little bit earlier. Like we were talking a little bit before this, trying to figure out how to get this system to work and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the marketing aspect is everything in the industry
Yeah.
right now. And I
Yep.
mean, we kind of saw it change a little bit, like early 2000. Like early 2000s. Like shoot, when we were in college, I mean, it was everybody was a patch pirate, and it was work for whatever
Yeah.
discount you can get. And I
Mm-hmm.
think now people are actually starting to understand, like, hey, it's about ROI. It's about
Yeah.
what am I getting back, and at the end of the day, it's all about selling product.
Yep.
If we're not selling product, if I'm not talking about Great Lakes Finesse and hey, you can buy this through me, and here's my discount code, and this can save you 15%, and it's
Right.
good every time you use it. Like, I'm not doing my job,
Right.
you know. And the thing is like it goes even further than that, to where if you look at like the marketing aspect is really starting to change with social media.
Big
And
time.
there's certain companies that are diving down that rabbit hole. There's certain companies that aren't. You can tell the ones that are and the ones that aren't, and they're kind of losing touch with their base. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where your startup brands that are handcrafting baits and everything like that.
Yeah.
They're sliding into that gap,
Yep.
and you guys aren't giving it back.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's going to be, I don't know about a lot of turnover, but like you said, like, there's going to be some serious slippage with some brands that have been around a long time, like historically good brands, not maybe any of the superpowers, but those ones that are big enough to be a lot of places, but they don't have any presence on social media. They've got some old timer running it that is getting 30 likes on a photo for a company that's in half the stores in the country. And at some point in time, like, there's going to be a change with some of these companies that know how to navigate that, know how to get some of that younger crowd without being super cringy in a way that, like, like, and to navigate it in a professional way. Like, you look at the rise of
Yep.
Six Sense, like everything they're doing right now looks badass. It makes people want to buy it and throw it and wear it. Like, the amount of
Yep.
Six Sense hats everywhere, like, they did it in a way that wasn't relying on 12-year-olds like going around
Yeah.
screaming whatever, right? They did it in a way that looked cool and people wanted to be on board with it. And look how big they are now. And
Well,
like,
and you look at the roots at where they started at too. I'd have to go digging around in a box to pull it out, but I've got one of the original Sixth Sense crankbaits. And you know what?
mm-hmm.
You can't get that mold, you can't get that bill
Yep.
anymore. The thing weighs like 2 ounces,
Yeah.
but dude, custom bluegill color, and it
Mm-hmm.
flat out catches fish. And
Yeah.
that was the whole thing. He kind of started about the same way, where he was just custom painting lures.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, that jumps up into a whole nother realm that nobody
Hmm.
ever really would have predicted.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really starts with just kind of perfecting your craft and like scaling the unscalable, like getting it to the point where like you have your niche established and people are going to talk about your stuff and not buy anybody else's, like there at this point in time, there's no spot for you in the market if you're doing anything like less like a below average, really. Like there's no money, you're not going to do it, like, and the standard just keeps raising because it's so competitive and so saturated that like if they can buy something better that's going to last longer, catch more fish, look better, like guys are just going to go for that. Like the bar's just getting raised so much, and people are realizing too that like their time on the water is so valuable now that like if they're going to go out, they want to catch fish, whether that's in a tournament or just fun fishing. Like even the weekend warriors that have never fished a tournament in their life, like those are guys that want nice stuff because they just want to catch fish. So
Exactly.
I mean, it's across the board that that standard is just raising so much that I think a lot of these companies that aren't meeting expectations, or you're going to start to see fall really quick, especially if they don't have the media presence to like convince enough people to buy it.
Exactly. And you look at the companies that are on the cutting edge too. And the thing is it's so much bigger than just the lure side of things. That's the fishing
Mm-hmm.
industry in general. You look
Yeah,
at it, we have an arms race going on with electronics. The
100%.
like if here was the ceiling with your boat brands before, the floor used to be
Yeah,
down here, now it's all the way up here.
yeah.
Like everything industry wise is or industry wide is becoming more and more competitive,
Yeah.
and there's not that much separation anymore. Like
Hmm.
what makes like I mean, a prime example, there's a Hinkle shed going for sale right now on eBay for $1,200.
Oh yeah.
Like $1,200 for a swim bait. But
Yep.
at the same time, I can go and buy a Guggen Squad swim bait for
And
12
some
bucks.
clearance bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but what's the difference between those, you know?
Yeah.
It's the quality and
Hmm.
versus quantity.
Yep.
You know, I mean, nowadays not everybody wants Walmart baits.
Right.
Like they want either JDM tackle or
Mm.
something that's homemade by somebody that actually knows how to fish for that particular fish that they're
Yep.
fishing for and is using the exact same technique that they want to use.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely think that that's kind of the market that we're going to see moving forward where like Bass Pro is doing it with their XPS line right now.
Yeah.
You look at some of the baits that they're coming out with, they're much more on the cutting edge than what it used to be, you know?
Yeah. Those have come a long way. Well, and I mean, just the quality of angler that like when we were in high school, like that's when YouTube was really starting to get its like steamroll, where
Yep.
like, yeah, like this is how you fish a jig, and these are the top 5 spring baits, and this is like whatever. It was fine, but now that whole group of anglers is in their 20s and 30s and whatever, and they've got the money to spend on it, and they've put in the time and the work. So like you're not going to sell them on like those really basic things anymore. Like they don't have a problem spending that much on a swim bait, like
Right.
it's getting that much more competitive that if we're in a tournament and I can get one kicker bite on a swim bait that's just a little bit different, that like can bump me into that cut or can push me on to the next level, like these guys don't have a problem spending that money anymore, like
Yeah.
they'll do whatever they have to because that's just the way the world works now. Like you just have to do whatever it takes to push to that next level, and
And
who
it
knows what it's going to be next.
like I'm just as guilty as anybody. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my big swim bait collection has gotten yeah, it's a bit of a problem now, but I
Yeah,
mean there's
man.
worse problems to have. You
Yeah.
know, there's a lot worse things you can spend money
Yeah.
on than fishing tackle. So how have you seen like obviously hot topic right now, forward facing sonar.
Hmm.
Okay. Hate it, love it, take it, leave it, whatever your opinion is on it. At the end of the day, it ain't really going anywhere.
Yeah.
So how have you seen that affect like what you guys are designing over there?
Yeah. I I still don't have scope on my boat now. I just got it. It should show up at the end of the week, early next week or something like that. And like I'm not the guy that's going to tell everybody you have to have it. Like obviously at the higher levels, yes. Like unless you're John Cox,
Yeah.
and even then, like there's only one John Cox. There's not
Yep.
another one of him. I don't care how hard you try. It's going to be really tough cutting your teeth and doing what he's doing now. But I'm not the guy that's going to come out with a bunch of minnow heads and completely change everything I'm doing because Yeah, it's big and it's very prevalent, but like a minnow is not the only way to scope. A minnow and a jerkbait, like, and that's what a lot of guys are starting to kind of realize too. Like, I've got some buddies that are absolute units out east. They live in Tennessee. Like, they're monsters, dude, and they're good at shaking a minnow. But they're starting to realize that, like, all those brush pile fish that have seen every minnow, no matter how it
Yeah.
wobbles or no matter how it shakes or looks or what color it is or how many forks they put at the very end of the tail, like you said, if you get hit in the head by that book enough times, like, you're going to start to learn, I'm going to get the heck out of the way, or I'm going to put myself behind something and I don't have to worry about it. And so I think with the industry going that way, I think just pushing the message now, which is my biggest thing, is just telling people that you don't just have to use a minnow. Like, I scope
Yep.
fish, like my buddy's tournament boats. We scope fish all the time with a jig. Like, Nebraska, they don't go out and roam and suspend, but they'll sit on top of a rock pile. If you put a jig right on their dome, like, they're going to eat it, you
Yeah.
know? And those fish that you can see in that brush pile that won't come out and chase your minnow, or they do and they don't want it and they go back down in there. If you put a living rubber jig in their head, like right in their face, and you just sit it there, like, you can't just sit a minnow in front of their face unless you're throwing a floating fly or something weird like that. Like,
Yeah.
you can't do it. It's got to keep moving. You got to keep shaking it. And sometimes they just don't want to move. And so these guys out east are starting to realize that they can take some really neat jigs that we custom make for them and just sit it right in front of their face and not move it. And that fish either has to sit there and look at it, and whether it's hungry, it's not hungry, like, eventually it's going to get pissed off enough that it doesn't want to look at it anymore, and they're going to pick it up. So, like,
Exactly.
there's a ton of different ways you can do that. And the other beauty of it too is, like, I feel like there's only so many ways you can modify a minnow. Like, oh, I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller. Sometimes it shakes. Put it on a different head, and there's about 5,000 ways you can modify a jig based on how you cut it, to where if I cut my skirt a certain way, it's going to flare a different way than how he cuts his skirt, how he cuts his skirt, and the materials you use in it. So, like, they might see a lot of jigs, but every single one of them, depending on how it's cut and the color scheme and the trailer, like the weight of it, like Trey McKinney was throwing that 3/4 ounce jig at the Classic
Yep.
and dumping it right in front of their face. And, like, that's a big profile. And those fish,
Yeah.
like, they're just going to eat it, man. Like, so I think the biggest thing right now isn't not so much for, I think the companies that want to stay relevant, like, and stay true to their roots, like, you just got to teach people that you don't just have to shake a minnow, no matter how good it is. Like, eventually those fish start to learn, like, I'm sick and tired of that, you know, and the Nico
Yep.
rigs and all your A rigs. Like, Justin Hamner won the Classic on a jerkbait and a jig. All those fish that he caught on a jerkbait that stopped firing on jerkbait, he just set that big old jig in that brush pile and caught a couple key fish doing that. Like,
Yep.
it's always going to be around. It's not going to go away. If you look at Tyler Williams and you ask him, like, hey, what do you like to do? I flip a jig.
Yeah. That's all he does.
That's it, dude. He
That,
throws the jerkbait when he has to, but, like,
dude, his interview before the Classic, they asked him, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "I'm gonna have two rods on my deck. I'm gonna have a jig, and I'm gonna have a jig."
yeah.
Like, that's what he was gonna
Yeah,
do.
and it's never gonna go away. A minnow mimics a minnow, and it looks like a minnow, and it swims like a minnow, and that's just what it's gonna mimic. A jig can be a crawdad, a crappie, a freaking guppy, some kind of salamander.
Yep.
Like, it can look like whatever you want it to look like, and that's the beauty of it, is they can't tell the difference. You know, like, we make a couple jigs that can imitate crappie and bluegill at the same time, and crawdads. Like, you can do so much with the jig skirt that can make it so dangerous, to where it doesn't have to just be a minnow or a 12-inch shad. Like, you know, it just does a ton. And even for like Tyler Williams, when he was on Fork, he was scoping with a big white jig
Yeah.
with, what was he throwing on the back of it? Like a freeloader?
Gosh, what did he have on there? Um, it was a bigger profile too. It wasn't
Yeah,
like
it
it
was a
was. It
big
wasn't like
freaking
it was
jig.
small.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was big, whatever it was. But, like, it's just one of those tools that's not going to go away. So I think the biggest thing right now is just teaching people, like, it doesn't have to be a minnow, you know. And
exactly.
I don't
Like
scope a ton. I don't throw a minnow. It's not me. I'm not going to be that guy for where I live. Like, I can cash a check at any tournament around here, flipping a jig and throwing a chatterbait and spinnerbait or buzzbait, you know, and, like,
Yep.
that's great. And I'm not going to be the guy that's going to go anywhere else in the country and think that I stand a chance throwing a minnow. So I might as well go do what I'm good at, which was chuck a jig at everything and figure out how they're going to eat it. Like everyone said we were crazy at the Natty at Pickwick when I said I'm not going to touch a ledge. We didn't win it, but we top 10 flipping a jig the way I wanted to. And like, I think everybody just has to get that out of their head that like the only way to do good isn't just like throwing a minnow anymore. You just got to learn your niche and what you like to do. And there's a million baits you can do it with.
Exactly. If you're fishing to your strengths, you're probably going to do better because number one, you're going to be enjoying what you're doing. Number two, you're actually going to actually understand what is going on around you, every little minute detail that is necessary.
Yep.
And number three, you don't have to be like everybody else.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to have a jersey on plastered with all these different logos and everything to go out and have fun and go fish.
Yep.
And like whether you want to use live scope or not, that is a personal preference. At the end of the day, live scope isn't helping me if I'm skipping a jig underneath a dock because guess what? I can't exactly skip a jig head minnow.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly.
It's just like we saw with the Alabama rig. There's a time and a place that it's hard to beat.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's not the end all be all. That thing is not out there just the almighty jig head minnow that catches every single fish you put it in front of. Shoot, if that was the case, I probably would have been fishing in the Classic because I would have done a lot better jig head minnowing down on Grand.
Right.
Like I can't even tell you how many fish it was in practice. You could get the bigger ones to bite on just about, and like every single one you threw to with the jig head minnow, just bam, bam. Second tournament day rolls around. Guess what? You couldn't keep off the 12 inchers, and them bigger ones are like, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
I kind of know what's going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Like it's fishing. At the end of the day, it's fishing. That's not going to change. That's never going to change.
No, it's making those adjustments and getting really comfortable with a bunch of different things, but it's been so fun. I just love watching the industry's opinion on things of like live scope and the minnow was the world, and like this isn't bass fishing, but it is. Like look at Bill Lowen, like look at how he won. Look at the Classic. Like if you look at any tournament, the jighead minnow is really good, and it'll always be good, and it's always going to be a player. But like, it's just another element to the sport now, and like guys are going to work around that, and like it is what it is.
Let's dive into how tournaments have been won so far this year. Just on Bassmaster, it's been 3 different baits. We saw Brandon Polinick win with an absolute mega bag of what was that, 34 pounds he had?
Yep.
And it was caught on a giant crankbait.
Yeah.
A giant shallow running crankbait that he was chucking out in the middle of no man's land.
Yeah.
Now, then on the flip side, on the St. John's, you got Bill Lowen up there just going and doing what he does best, which is throwing a swim jig and throwing a jig. And those were the only 2 things that he hardly touched. On the flip side, you got Easton Fothergill, who is, I mean, that dude's on another planet. I don't know. I think if Aaron Martins was reincarnated, it was as
he's back.
Fothergill. Like he's back. The dude's brain just works differently. But the thing is everybody, it was like, oh, he's scoping. Like, dude won it throwing a Nico rig. Like, how much more fun can you have than putting on a giant Strike King bull worm and saying, hey, here's an 8-inch worm, eat it.
Yeah.
You know?
He was throwing it on a 17-pound leader.
Yeah,
like
it wasn't it was not mom and dad's finesse fishing out in the middle of the Great Lakes. Like, it's not St. Clair shaking a drop shot on 4-pound test line.
Yeah.
Like that was in your face. I'm going to take a spinning rod and I'm going to go around some nasty stuff that I can get this thing wrapped up on, but I'm still going to do it because they're going to eat it.
Yeah.
It just it kind of baffles me though, exactly like what some people's opinions were and how much hate Easton was getting on that.
It was nuts.
Because like he's like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Like the negativity that's been following, the negativity that's been going around, I honestly think it's like you got a bunch of keyboard trolls and they tend to have one ringleader who I would actually love to have on this podcast to have a conversation at some point in time.
Yeah.
But the thing is at the end of the day, bass fishing is becoming a sport.
Yeah.
It's truly becoming a sport to where now, like at the end of the day, Michael Jordan, Nolan Ryan, Tom Brady, like even Aaron Rodgers, we're seeing it now. These guys can't perform at that level, the highest level that is out there forever.
Right.
you know? And I mean, fishing's the same way. If anybody could do it, it was Rick Clunn. And
Yep.
even Rick Clunn took a step back.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't because he wasn't learning more.
Mhm.
He embraced forward facing sonar more than anybody.
Yeah.
And throughout his career, you look at everything that's come along. He adapted and he
Mhm.
excelled and he won.
Yeah.
I mean, dude won his last tournament when he was in his 70s.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal. Like I want us to be that one day. But
Mhm.
it's just crazy how everybody hops on the negative bandwagon rather than focusing on the positive.
Yeah.
Like you haven't heard a ton of people. Adam Bartusik had a really good take on it. I loved what he had to say, and he kind of opened a can on them. But the big thing is like you look at somebody who's battled adversity. You know, everything from emergency brain surgery
Oh
to
yeah.
he comes back and he wins that tournament and qualifies for the classic. And that's
Mhm.
his first classic ever. And then he goes out and just absolutely dominates the crap out of everybody on the opens. And I mean, to the point where like dude was untouchable.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna lie, I picked him in my first two fantasy tournaments and that did not go so well. But
Yeah.
to bounce back from having the low to from being at the highest of highs to going to the lowest of lows, and then you come back and you win the tournament of a lifetime
Yeah.
and in dominating fashion, it's flat out impressive.
Yeah.
Like it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting too. Like that was a big talk this weekend at the Classic of like the amount of negativity that is just around now, and I think it'll always be there. It's just like any sport. Like everybody's going to hate on everybody, and that's not my team. And I'm rooting for John Cox. He doesn't have a transducer. I don't think that's ever going to go away. I don't know if it's something that just needs to be ignored more or not. Like it seems like the focus is on the negativity, and it's the world is on fire mentality of like
Oh yeah.
it's always gonna be worse. And I don't know if you fix that. I don't know how you fix that. But at the end of the day, like I think there's far more positives that don't get talked about. Like this whole new class of anglers is insane,
Oh,
and they're just going to keep
they're
getting better.
hammers.
Like we're the industry is pumping out more and better anglers every day. The college circuit since I graduated is insane. Like you
Oh
look at
yeah.
the last 8 years and how much that's grown in high school fishing and how much that's going to feed the sport in the future. Like I think the biggest reason for all the hate now is because it's changing at a rate that people can't quite like conceptualize. Like, how did we go from these tournaments and no technology to all of a sudden you've got anglers that are like, but that are it's only the forward facing sonar. You could take it away and these guys would still win.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's all they've been doing nonstop at a level that is so much higher than the pros currently were at,
Yep.
however long ago. Like,
Well, I remember when Troy Deedy caught the state record smallmouth here
mm-hmm.
on Lake Oahe.
Yep.
Like I got to fish with him 2 days after that, and what that man was doing with 2D sonar, I have not
Oh,
seen
yeah.
anybody else doing. But and I won't dive into his secret. I'll bring him
Right.
on here to talk about
Yep.
that. But like I know growing up, like when me and dad were smallmouth fishing on Lake Michigan, or when you're fishing for like one thing we always used to do on Kentucky Lake, you followed the birds.
Yeah.
Like if you saw the birds busting, well, guess what? Those fish would just up and disappear. So you're
Mm-hmm.
out in no man's land now looking for the birds again. And what dad taught me to do is he's like, hey, he's like, take that chart speed on that 2D sonar and turn it all the way up. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, you can see your bait on 2D sonar.
Mm-hmm.
And he even had a really interesting take because he's like, man, he's like, I kind of thought about it back in the day, but he's like, I thought about like taking a 2D sonar and just like pointing it forward on an angle just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so that has always been there. You
Yep.
know, there's always been somebody who's been on the cutting edge, thinking a little bit outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Martin's dominated tournaments using 2D sonar to a level
Yep.
that nobody else understood. KVD did it with side imaging and then
Mm-hmm.
360. Like Brandon Polinick even did it with 360.
Yeah.
But I think now, like, you look at these last three tournaments that have happened. In the Classic, I mean, there weren't many guys shaking a jig head minnow that were in the top 10.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Look at Lee Livesey in that
oh
pink
my
Saturday. He
gosh.
was throwing.
Yeah. Chucking around a pink chatterbait. You got Hunter Schreier going up shallow and flipping a jig. You got
Mm-hmm.
you got John Cox doing his thing with no forward facing sonar.
Yeah.
So like can you explain to me how this guy's up there catching fish and like,
Yep.
oh, everybody else is just shaking a minnow out there? Like, it's kind of mind blowing because I think people have gotten so wrapped up in that conversation that they have lost sight of what's really actually going on. And
Yeah.
what we're seeing now is we're seeing more diversity and it really just being another tool in the repertoire. But I think the biggest thing that led us to where we are was the scheduling more than anything else. Because if the schedule's off and the fish are doing one thing and you're chasing the spawn, when you get into spawn chasing or you're trying to line everything up around that for your first few tournaments, eventually you're going to hit a point where it's going to be nothing but live scope.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it is. If fish are out in the middle of nowhere, which now that we know that they're out there, guess what? Even if they take it away, I'm probably using a high speed through hole
Right.
transducer and I'm running 60 miles an hour zigzagging back and forth until I find a pod. And then I'm just going to follow them around with 2D sonar.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be somebody who's going to do that. Me
Yep.
personally, I don't have the patience for it. I'm probably going to go
Right.
flip a jig, but
Yep.
like the whole thing is I think we're on the right direction. I think recognizing it is the first step in that.
Yeah.
I think as we move forward, I think that younger generation, if we continue to focus on the positive aspects of fishing, it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's enough hammers coming up that
Mhm.
it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary what some of these kids can do.
Yeah. Well, and with technology now too, like you're seeing it with Tyler Williams, like when Kevin Van Dam started doing the power fishing with the crankbait thing, and like you said, side scan and 360 and some of that stuff, like he blew everyone away. Like nobody could do it as good as he could. And I think now you're going to see, especially with the younger guys, like you can kind of pick your poison and find out like what you're really good at. Like everybody's going to be good at everything, but I think you're going to see a lot of those anglers like picking that one thing that is different or is old school or whatever and really mastering that and being very competitive. Like John Cox does good right now because he's going to live and die shallow. And anytime there's a shallow bite, he's probably going to find it and he's going to do good enough to survive to the next year or win one or do whatever he needs to do, you know. And Tyler Williams with his jig bite, like I think you're going to see a lot of those anglers that like have that thing that they're really good at. Or Fothergill with his Nico rig, like
Yep.
when it happens, it's going to happen big. And like I think that's going to be a really big thing coming up. Is just guys really becoming specialists, you know, and this is what I'm really good at, but I can do other things, you know, too. So
Well, and
it'll be
that's the
interesting
thing. I
to
mean,
see.
John Cox has even gotten a top 10 on the St. Lawrence River, which is the last place that you would
Yeah.
expect somebody with no live scope to get a top 10. But dude did it.
Yeah.
Like it's possible, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think the big thing is like you look at the class of guys that are coming up. Your Easton Fothergill, John Garrett, Trey McKinney, JT Tompkins, Tyler Williams,
Mm-hmm.
all these young guys, Drew Gill. Let's
Oh
get
yeah.
outside. Let's get outside the Bassmaster box
Yep.
here. But like all these young guys that are our generation or even younger,
Yeah.
like the thing is the learning curve is so much smaller than what it has been previously.
Yep.
They understand how to use YouTube. They understand what they need to learn.
Yep.
And the big thing is time on the water.
Yep.
They're working harder than anybody out
Yep.
there right now. And they're putting the time in. And there's certain things that you can't trade time on the water.
Yeah.
Time on the water teaches you things that nobody else is going to learn and that you can't necessarily just get from a YouTube video,
Yep.
you know? And as these kids start coming up, like we got to make room for them somehow. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the unfortunate part is that it's a lot like NASCAR is probably the best comparison
Mm-hmm.
where you know what, like there's turnover. I was a huge Jimmy Johnson fan. I'm probably going to get crucified for that on here, but like I love Jimmy Johnson.
Yep.
You know, my best friend loved Kevin Harvick. They're two of the best to ever do it, but at the same time, like they've hung it up here
Yeah.
recently, you know. And I mean, we've seen one of the probably without a doubt the best of all time hang it up here recently in
Yep.
KVD. And like I grew up watching KVD. The dude could do it all. He still can do it all.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, once you reach a certain age, your priorities change. You know,
Right.
it's not all just about tournament fishing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, for us, like we sit here and I'm like, I'm just tickled pink for that next Tuesday nighter that I get to go and try to blow
Right.
the doors off of somebody, you know?
Yep.
Like that's all we think about.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, like I'd imagine by the time we're 40, 45, I don't think we're going to be thinking the exact same way that we are at
Exactly.
like 20 to 28, 20 to 30,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. And I think about this a lot too. And like the rise of the UFC and the prominence that has now compared to where it used to be. And like
Yep.
the turnover in that, I think people are so much more used to, because like Conor McGregor was really good.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
really good. He's not going to be really good in 10 years, right? Like,
No.
and you're going to watch a lot of these guys that rise and fall and rise and fall. And it's no different in fishing. Like, you're going to be really good. You're going to have your stand. And a lot of these guys have been around for so long with so little turnover because, like, it hasn't been the same. But now, like, just like the UFC, you've got all these guys from some random Russian country coming in that are
Yeah.
just substantially better, right? That are blowing the doors off and getting rid of a lot of fighters. And yeah, there's a lot of animosity with that, but it's the way the game works, and it's no different in fishing. So like, I think you just got to learn to accept that, and as a pro, just be better. Like, you want to be around, just get better. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you're sick and tired of getting beat, just figure it out, man. Like, you got
And
to do something different.
and that's the thing. Like you touched on it earlier where you said there's so much rapid change happening. And I think that's what people are having
Mm-hmm.
trouble adjusting to.
Yeah, change is
Is that
hard.
there is
Change is
so
hard
much
at
change.
anything.
Oh yeah, it is. But like you've seen the changing of the guard in Major League Fishing. You've seen it in
Mm-hmm.
Bassmaster now, where MPFL is so new that there hasn't necessarily been a changing of the guard. But I mean, my personal pick to click is Patty Walters.
Yep.
Dude's an animal. Like it
Yeah.
don't matter. No matter what he's got on his boat or what rods he has in his boat, none of us are going to know what bait he's ever throwing. God
Right.
knows he's not going to show that. But the thing is, the dude is a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
He is like definition of the word. If I look it up in the dictionary, I'm going to see a picture of Patty
Oh
Walters'
yeah.
face sitting right there with some kind of bait in his hand, probably a
Yeah.
jerk bait. But like the thing is it's not what we grew up with.
Yeah.
Like I remember when Dad won the BASS Open on or where was that? It was on Ohio River, 2004, and I remember because I was sitting there at like 8 years old, and I'm like, where's Dad? Like he hasn't weighed in yet. Like what's going on? And I remember Edwin Evers was sitting there, and Edwin Evers like looked at us, and he's like, who's your dad? I was like, John Farmer. He's like, oh, he's got a bag. He's like, he's weighing it last. He's like, here, come with me. So him and Gary Klein are the two that lift me over the barrier, and
Yep.
I get to see my dad win the co-angler side, like, and it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But it's like over time, like I remember like the 2000 Classic, for instance, on Lake Michigan. Like I remember watching that. That was the first classic I went to at Soldier Field,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember Woo Dave's won it.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys are a lot of younger guys now. You say who's Woo Dave's? They know the name,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't necessarily remember watching the angler.
Right.
Like we're kind of in that age group where we've seen just about like we've seen the hammers of different times, and you've seen the changing of the guard
Yeah.
already to where we're not as affected by that change, whereas somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's been watching it for 50 years and they've seen the same
Yeah.
people for 30 to 35, now that's
Yeah.
a major change.
Yep. Yeah. Shaw Grigsby's their favorite angler,
Oh yeah.
Things are a little bit different now.
Dude, that mustache is iconic. Gosh.
Yep.
I wish mine looked that good. But that's the thing. I mean, like I love watching Hackney. I love Gerald Swindle. Gerald Swindle brings the personality to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other thing that we need to see happen is we need young guys with personality.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to come in like when ESPN owned Bassmaster, they played so much on the KVD Ike rivalry that the two of them
Oh
hated
yeah.
each other. And in reality, the two of them didn't hate each other. Like, yeah, they were competitive. They competed
Mm-hmm.
against each other, but they had no ill will or animosity.
Yep.
Like, but they 100% played that for marketing.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Everybody talks about that was the heyday of
Yeah.
the industry, and we can get back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be some steps that we got to do to get
Yeah.
back to it. But,
Well, and look at what Milliken's doing right now. Like the guy
Oh,
put his
yeah.
mugshot on a T-shirt, and like I think he's trying to kind of be the bad guy of bass fishing, of like,
But
I'm gonna
Ben
I'm gonna
can't be the
embrace
bad
live
guy.
scope. He's like, I'm gonna embrace live scope with everything I have. I'm gonna attack Randy Blockett with my entire life force, and like, whatever it may be, like he's trying to be, whether you love him or hate him, whatever it may be, like you look at his YouTube channel and the captions and the titles he uses, like
Oh gosh.
he's doing everything he can to stay like to remain in controversy, and it's working. Like he's built a huge brand, and I think Bassmasters and just that kind of whole the fishing world in itself is you need to shut up, you need to be polite, you need to you just got to like fall in that line of that
Yep.
respectful angler and be like, oh, I just got lucky today. And you're seeing a lot more of those anglers now that are rising to serious popularity that are like you said, it's a personality deal. Like Ike and Ellie might not break a top 50 all year, but if he catches a 5-pounder, he's still got to scream loud enough that everybody on the lake can hear him, like it's just
Well,
that kind of stuff that I think is so important. And Gerald Swindle the same way, like making your own brand and the stuff that you're known for, whether people like it or not. Like I think there needs to be a lot of anglers like that too, and just like being themselves, like just doing whatever that may be to get some camera time, because people are going to talk about it. There's so many ways to make money now between YouTube or selling baits or freaking out, like whatever that may be. I mean, it
oh
might
yeah,
not be
like
as sustainable as being really good, but golly, you're going to get some looks.
oh yeah, like I can't even tell you who it is. So like I'm scrolling around on Instagram Reels and everything, and it pops up, and I've seen the video a million times, and every time I do, I got to watch it like 2 or 3 times. But when the two guys are in the kayak, and the one guy's sitting there and he's holding the fish, and all of a sudden his buddy in the background's just like, it's a giant. Like,
Yes.
dude,
Yes.
that video every single time, just I have to watch it multiple
Yep.
times. Like it's straight gold.
Oh yeah.
But like that's what we need. We need
Yeah.
somebody who's exciting. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing is at the end of the day, whether somebody's staring at a screen or they're chucking a chatterbait out in front, I'm still looking at his back.
Yeah.
Like we need to figure out a way to make the actual videos and live stream side of things more entertaining.
Yeah.
I don't know if that outside the box opinion, I loved watching it on Saturday mornings when it was a lot smaller and live wasn't a thing. And like I'm a total nerd, so I will watch every single second of live just to see what somebody's doing. And like,
Yep.
oh, they're using this bait and this bait and this bait, and they're doing this. And oh,
Mm-hmm.
look at how he is like shaking his rod. Like
Yeah.
it's bad. I might have a problem. But but the thing is that's not entertaining for everybody.
Right.
That is for your total nerds. So for us to use that as the only form of watching it, like honestly, if you go on My Outdoor TV, what Major League Fishing is doing right now with having the multiple episodes and everything, and it's condensed down to 1 to 2 hours of film,
Yep.
if they could edit down the tournament day into an hour long of highlights,
Oh yeah.
dude, it would be so much better and so
Mhm.
much more entertaining. And you know what? They can post it on YouTube and they're going to get a lot of views. And then
Oh
it's
yeah.
actually going to be able to see, like, hey, this tournament got X amount of views this time.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be public knowledge at that point.
Yeah.
Then we don't have to hear nearly as many arguments as, oh, the fishing industry's going down to crapper and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just looking at TikTok and Instagram and like just the real base, like people's attention spans are not what they used to be.
No.
Like just finding a way to embrace that. And I don't care what it is. Like I love watching the highlights on Bassmaster. If they could pump out as many of those as possible,
Yep.
like from the fish catches and stuff that's cool. Like how many do they do per day of the tournament? Maybe 8?
Probably right around there, about one per
8?
hour.
Yeah, ish, right? Like I don't know. Like I would watch a billion of those. Like if I don't have time to actually put live on, same way you are. Like I'll sit here and tie
Yep.
jigs all day and watch that. I don't have any issues with it. Like that's great. But for the guys that like we worked a booth all day at the Classic and didn't have a chance to watch it. We're too tied up talking to people, which was great. But like every day the second it was over, you'd pop on Instagram and watch every highlight. Like
Oh,
just
yeah.
trying to see where guys were at. So I think the more of those you can pump out too, just keeping that relevant and giving people stuff to watch and content, like that'd be great. You make a whole segment of that where you watch, I don't know about every fish catch, but everything that's worth its salt at the end of the day and condense it into a YouTube video or a TikTok or whatever
Yep.
you want to. Like people are going to watch that,
Well, and that's the thing. When we're out there competing, yeah, I want my tournament day to be longer. If I'm sitting there watching it as a product, We've seen it with baseball. We've seen it with football, where the
Yep.
entertainment is included more in football than anything else. But baseball, with the pitch clock and them trying to speed the game up,
Hmm.
I think if you could condense it down to where each day is an hour 20 or an hour to an hour and a half long product for people to be able to watch,
Yep.
I bet you the viewership numbers go through the roof. But the thing is
Oh,
you have to have that entertainment value to the everyday angler, as well as people that are new to the sport.
yeah.
Because if we're going to continue to see this grow and we're going to see non-endemic money get injected in and actually make more business opportunities for guys like us, that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like, have you seen the new NFL stuff that they're doing, or like college games where they'll take every snap and they cut out everything in between? So it's the snap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll
Yeah. It
take it where
condenses the
it's
game
like,
down to like 30
yeah,
minutes.
it's insane. And I'll sit there like if I'm working during a Husker game or whatever, like not that they're ever good to watch, but you can sit there and watch every snap of the game that was worth anything, that like
Yep.
actually had an impact on it, and you'd have the whole game in 30 minutes instead of no commercials, no timeouts, nothing. It does the whole game. You get the whole gist really quick. Like I feel like there's a way you could probably pull that off at the tournament. There's
Well,
so much
there,
dead time. Like if John Cox gets 5 bites in a day, I want to watch every bite he gets,
yeah.
without watching 8.5 hours of him like pitching a wacky rig or swimming doing whatever he's doing. Like I think there's a way that could happen with every or even if you did every catch that they're going to weigh in, like every keeper or like major significant calls, like you could condense it down to not very long, with every
Yep.
important moment for those anglers. And then for the guys that can't watch it, like you just give a stream of, okay, I've got the whole day. I know what he caught it on. I know where he was at. Oh, that was a big call. And then it's over, like great.
Yep.
So,
And that's the thing. Like, I think they also, on that production side of things, I think they need to find a legitimate replacement for Zona. They have to, because here's the thing.
fruit bat.
And
He's a fruit bat.
oh man, dude, there's so many with Zona. I remember watching Zona's Awesome Fishing Show. It's like the first season. He lands this giant smallmouth, and Zona's from like where I'm from. Like, dude grew up like 15 minutes away from my hometown.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just sitting there, and he's holding this giant smallmouth, and he just looks at it, and he's like, "Little cubby bear, go sleep now." I'm like, this man is from a different planet. But
Yeah.
the thing is, NPFL has done that with Fat Cat Newton.
He's a great guy. Got to meet
dude,
him again. He is the nicest guy ever.
I'm jealous. I haven't gotten to meet him yet.
He's so cool.
Dude, he seems like an absolute riot, but you put him with Luke Duncan, who's already an awesome personality as well.
Yep.
The thing is like Tommy Sanders is a legend.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have somebody to go with him too.
Yeah.
You can't just rely solely on Tommy and Davey to really carry that show when you lose somebody like Zona. They need another personality
with somebody
in there.
like that. They need to tap those boys in and get them going.
Yep. And that's the thing. I mean, Rick Clum would be awesome on there, but the dude's the Zen master. That'd be like having. Gosh, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Former coach for the Bulls, Phil. Why am I drawing a blank on it? Dude got like 6 rings.
Gosh,
and then went to the Lakers. Oh, I'm gonna get lit up in the comments for that. If you know who it is, put it in the comments. But yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. Like personality runs this. I think Iaconelli will. I 100% think Iaconelli will be on there when the time comes for him to retire. But like we need more personality from guys our age.
Like,
don't be. If you're a high school angler watching this, if you're a college angler watching this, don't be afraid to be yourself.
Yeah.
Have a personality.
Yep.
I mean, shoot, like Caleb Summerall, for instance, dude is just a absolute riot. Like riot. Oh my gosh. Like he instantly became one of my favorite dudes on this planet within 5 minutes of talking to him.
Yeah.
But the thing is, not everybody gets to see that. Like right. you see it when he's on the screen. He is awesome when he's on the screen.
Yep.
But the thing is, I'm like, we need Ricky Bobbies out there.
Yeah, we need a lot of.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of the thing too. Like just now is marketing yourself and kind of going against that. Like again, it's Bassmaster's way. Like look at Matt Robertson. Like
oh,
he,
phenomenal.
he nailed it.
Phenomenal.
Gerald Swindle, Matt Robertson, like all those guys, Jordan Lee,
Kyle
like he
Patrick.
created, yes, Kyle Patrick. He's a fruit
Fruit
bat,
bat.
have created such a like an aura around what they do, and they might bomb a tournament but kick out a hilarious YouTube video of everything. Yep. Like if you do get that chance on live, like so many of those guys have a huge fan base now because they're taking a leak off the boat and they catch a fish or they're whatever it may be, right? Like the stories they tell, like I think that's going to be even more important and getting away from that, like whatever it may be, you know, like that standard cookie cutter, like I need to go up, I need to be respectful, like thanks fam, like, you know, like say some funny stuff, man, be you, like when you're on the boat, you got the camera on you, like give the people something to watch, you know, like it's kind of, you ever remember watching Chris Zaldane?
Oh yeah.
One of the classics where he wouldn't fish. He kept trying to talk to the camera and they're like, Chris, you gotta fish, man. Like he'd catch a giant and he'd spend 6 minutes like plugging his bait, just like freaking out. Like, dude, just fish. Like,
well, even John Garrett during the classic, like on live, spent 10 minutes talking about his Carolina rig setup and showed everybody exactly how to set it up. I mean, that's awesome. Like we need, like that's kind of what we need, especially if live is going to be the format.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, dude, like you gonna throw it in the water or
you're sitting there getting really still going.
I'm like, I need to see you catch a fish. Especially because I picked him in fantasy. But yeah, that worked out so well. So I do got to ask you this. So we do have a fan base watching this show that is from the walleye side of things. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I wanted to pick your brain on, how many walleye anglers have you seen buying like what we would consider a bass jig?
Well, you know, I don't know. I sell some blade baits. I catch some walleye occasionally on a jig. I catch them on a chatterbait a lot. I don't know that I've ever told anybody. I worked at Shields for a long time selling, and I don't know if I've ever specifically sold people who walleye fish bass jigs. We make kick-ass blade baits, so anybody on here, we've got a couple things for you. And like a chatterbait is a really good way if those walleye get up in the grass to like catch some giants. Like we've got some freaking freaks on it. And if you're around some bigger fish, there's a lake in Nebraska called Lake McConaughey. And I got some buddies that fish it for smallmouth, and we make a big football chatterbait that just grinds on rock real good. And they catch some freaks out there too doing that. Because, you know, I think that, I don't know, walleye or any type of predatory fish, like I'll catch them on big swim baits. Like they eat whatever. Like they're just like a bass. They just don't fight at all and are super not fun and everyone hates them. But anyway, man. I don't know. Like I suppose I wouldn't probably tell anybody to do it, but we make cool blade baits. So,
dude, that's
is that a thing up there that I'm not missing? Like,
so
that I'm missing out on?
It's kind of a secret hush hush thing that there's a few of us that kind of figured that out. And like, I mean, I had one day on Roy Lake, and nobody goes up and walleye fishes Roy Lake anymore. Like that's one of the lakes that everybody's like, oh, bass are the issue behind Roy Lake. It's like, no, it's a phenomenal bass fishery. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Just let us have at least a lake.
Yeah.
You know, but dude, I was up there just chunking and whining a chatterbait. And next thing you know, you got 3 in the boat that are over 26. And it's like, like little sneaky stuff. Like, honestly, like when you're on them on Big Stone and they move up shallow, keep a swim jig locked in your hand. Yeah. And that's all you need to do. But the thing is like nobody's really dove down that rabbit hole. Nobody's dove down the rabbit hole of, hey, I need to have a 7.6 flipping stick and 65-pound test braid, and let's go punching for big walleye.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. You have not lived until you pulled a 27-inch walleye out of some lily pads, and that thing just comes up, and you have no idea what it is. You don't know if it's going to be a big pike. You don't know if it's a big walleye, a big bass. Like, there's a certain element of surprise that comes with that gets you every time when you're fun fishing.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of disappointment too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Depending on the circumstance, I had one on I had one on Big Stone, and you can ask Max this. So Max was in the boat with me, and we're fishing this tournament. I remember it was on what was it? It was one of the full throttle tournaments out there. And
Yep.
dude, it was tough. Like it's windy, just brutal, brutal. No live scope on the boat or anything. And we were fishing out of a 16.5 foot Stratus on Big Stone. And
Awesome.
you know Big Stone can flat out roll.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're out there and we had a limit, but we had like 16 pounds, which guys, Big Stone it's called Pig Stone for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis on the P, not a B, Pig Stone.
Yeah. 16 on Pig Stone is not a good day.
Yeah, 16 ain't doing you nothing. So we go out and we're looking for bigger fish, right? So we pull up on this little offshore rock deal, and I've caught them off there before, and like 3 big marks on 2D sonar. I'm like, oh, okay, drop a drop shot down. First drop, bam, it loads up. I get it up to the top, and I'm like, that's the biggest walleye I've ever caught in my life. So I get it in the boat, unhook it. Max is just sitting there. He's like, dude, do you realize what you just caught? And I'm like, that's a big walleye. And I throw it back, and he like looks at me. He's like, dude, what? You didn't even take a picture with it. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that thing was like 29, 30 inches long. He's like, that's like people fish their whole life for that. And I'm like, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, well, it took it about 2 seconds to bite a drop shot. And I'm like, if you throw it down there, you could probably catch the other 2 that are sitting with it because they're still on the graph. Like, and sure enough, he ended up catching one. It ended up going like 28.5 inches. And then we got out of there because we needed a big bass. But
Yep.
like, it's kind of funny how stuff like that happens where a lot of the times when you're bass fishing, like we're catching catfish, we're catching white bass, we're catching walleye, you get into the pike, you get into muskie every now and then, depending on the lake you're in up here. I don't think a lot of people understand the fact that, like, as these fish start to get more pressured, like we were talking about with bass is kind of on the cutting edge side of things where everything's ultra realistic. And now we're starting to see that crossover into other species as well as pressure increases on those fish.
Yep.
I mean, there's some sneaky things that guys are doing on the Missouri River right now, like throwing big swim baits that nobody's really kind of dove into. And they catch big fish. Guys are doing it down on McConaughey, but they're not talking about it up here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it seems like, and we've always kind of laughed about that, but like that whole chatterbait deal, like,
oh yeah,
walleye
it's a
on it's
deal.
gonna be a big one. You're not gonna have to catch eaters on it, but like everything you catch is 22 to 24 plus, if not a freak of nature. And like it's the same way with those big swim baits, like chucking a big boot tail or even a mag draft. Like you get around the right size walleye, they're gonna eat it. Like we caught 28 at Mazingo 2 weeks before this other tournament, went back to the same spot. And I'm slow rolling a mag draft over it, and like second cast load up. And I'm like, dude, it's a freaking giant. I'm like, we're gonna catch 28 again. It's coming, man. I'm freaking out. And it's kind of fighting weird, and it comes up, and it's like a 27.5-inch walleye. And I go, oh my! And you cannot see the swim bait. It is like
just engulfed
all the way in the back. And so,
oh man,
I mean, I think that's one thing that like is just another misconception is like you get in an area that has the right fish, like a walleye. You know, like if you're going for big ones or you're that guy that like doesn't care about eaters. You want to catch trophies, and you know they're there. Like they'll eat a bass jig. Like I've caught a lot of big walleye on rock piles on a football jig and stuff like that, or like a chatterbait if you're slow rolling it and stuff. So I suppose we do have them. I don't typically advertise for guys like that. You know, not really our target audience, but like yeah, it definitely works.
Dude,
I know about it.
Hey, I'm just trying to increase sales for you, man.
Oh,
that's all I'm trying to do here.
If you want to catch giant walleye, our football head chatterbait is the only thing. That's it. I can make them in bright pink or chartreuse or what are some other? I can make it Wonder Bread. You guys
like Wonder Bread, purple and green.
Yes.
Like
the most unrealistic thing ever. I'll do it. I'll put it in chatterbait. It'll be great. If they're eating bright yellow today, we can make it in bright yellow.
Oh man. Well, I mean, Lee Livesey's out there chucking hot pink around. I mean, that might be something to look into.
I thought about dropping one today or tomorrow and just doing like a pre-order for pink ones to jump on the bandwagon. And I saw 15 other custom companies do the same thing. So
man,
I might do it just to see. Like we have our own customer base. I know I'll probably sell a couple, but wasn't that crazy?
I'll buy one.
Wasn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like I watched that video and went, I thought he's throwing like a floating worm or something at first when I saw it, because I didn't watch the first half. I just saw him pulling the boat. They pulled it out and I went, no way. I was like, this is going to shake things up so much. But
Dude,
we've
and that,
got guys that order our little wizard jigs, like our little finesse jigs.
yep.
They're real small and tiny, but we have guys order them all the time, and like a bright pink or like a neon purple and yellow or like an electric chicken color, like all those like obnoxious colors, and they just work. Or like, even we had a guy that bought a shit ton of them for the Missouri River on those wing dams, and a
Yep.
fire craw color. He got a bunch of big finesse jigs in that fire craw color. And I was like, yeah, all right, man. Like, I'll make them. And he sends me a bunch of pictures the next week of like just 4-pounders with them in the
Wow.
gullet. It was nuts. So yeah, man, I suppose like that's always one of our things fishing, like some of those Missouri lakes that get just beat up. Like,
Yep.
I feel like you can either go really finessey and natural, or you can go stupid
Really
weird. And
big.
I like going really weird with it. Like, there's a couple of those lakes that I always just pre-tie a bunch of weird stuff for, because I know, like, okay, I can go catch them on the normals all morning, and then the afternoon's going to hit, and they're going to be like, no, ain't going to happen, man. And then you roll through with like a bright, like straight June bug purple with chartreuse in it, football jig in a brush pile, and catch 2 3-pounders, and you're like, I just fished that an hour ago, like with everything that should have worked, and they ate it. Or like throwing chatterbaits that are just obnoxious, like just weird stuff, and they munch it. We made like a laminate blue and purple jig for a while that was just nasty looking. Like, it looked so weird. The amount of big fish we caught down there on that like, I don't know what it's mimicking, but they just ate it,
And
like,
that's the thing. Like, I've seen that too with big fish, where there's a lot of times where sometimes those big fish, they either want it ultra finesse, or like you said, they want it ultra weird,
yeah,
or they want it ultra big, and
yes.
there's no in between.
Mm-mm.
And I, like taking a look at the lineup of jigs that you guys have. You guys have like stuff that goes across every single possible scenario that you need to play in the Midwest. I mean, you got
Mhm.
the Midwest flipping jig, you got your football jig, you've got the mop jig, the little wizard, which is a personal favorite of mine.
That
Like
little
the
wizard smokes them, dude.
oh,
Biggest fish ever caught
dude,
on the 9-1 in Kansas. Like,
really?
yeah, dude, it catches some freaks.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that gives me some ideas for a little bit later on this year. We'll talk about that after we're done filming.
Deal,
Can't
deal.
can't put everything out there. But like you guys have played at jigs and everything, and like especially the swim jigs. Like, I really like the hook design that you guys have for them and everything. Like, have you developed your own molds, or have you tinkered with a lot of different molds? Like, how did you
So
settle in on what you got?
yeah, so that took a lot of time, because I didn't like just figuring out what I really liked and how I like to fish them, because I didn't want to be like everybody else. Like, I've got my style, and I like to build my baits around that because I can sell them better, and they just work, right? Like, I love shaking a swim jig. That hook design there, like, they eat it, I'm gonna stick them. They're not coming off. Like, it just works for shaking a jig, because when they get it, you get them. Like,
Yep.
it really locks them in. But like, we're designing all new molds right now. I'm getting a big spin cast machine and redesigning all the molds. So like, we're going from like one at a time garage do it mold company, which do it molds catch them just fine, but just to further separate ourselves and to really kind of hone in on, after 4 or 5 years of making these and using them, like, there's some things I want to change and some things that we're going to improve. And like, I'm working on a provisional patent right now for something that I can't talk about yet, but like,
Ooh.
we got a lot of really interesting stuff dropping in probably May or June. May's the goal. And it's going to shake some stuff up. Like, we're going to
Okay.
have a new type of swim jig that's going to float like none other, and some really finessey. So like, we're going to drop, basically completely start over. And some of the things we're not going to fix what's not broken. Like, the little wizard might look a little bit different. We're going to make a couple of improvements, but there's a couple of them that it's pretty hard to really upgrade, and there's a couple of them that are going to like really shake some stuff up, which is really exciting. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, because again, it's all getting molded around how I like to fish in the situations that I've been in and gone, I really need something like this. And then you start talking to people and they're like, oh yeah, like you just see across the market, like there's a couple gaps that like people are settling for right now, or they're trying to make modifications that just don't need to be made,
Yep.
and everybody like, I don't know. It's going to be really exciting to see. We'll talk about that more later when they come out because I don't want to give too much away.
Yep.
But it's going to be, LS is going to look like a whole different company, and it's going to be really exciting. Like I said, come May, once that all gets worked out, because it's going to look pretty sick. Like we're going to have some really neat stuff that like you just can't get. Like they just don't exist in a good way that actually is feasible for a lot of folks, which would be really cool.
So now, out of everything that you have in your lineup, like what would you say is your go-to? Like if you had to pick one for everybody listening out there that they need to buy, they have to have it in
Yes.
their tackle box. What one is it?
It's our Midwest flipping jig. Like, so with that one, the head design's really good. I swim it a ton. Like I love our swim jig. Don't get me wrong on that, but it's such a good do-all. Like we make it in a quarter, 3/8, and a half, which covers most bases. Like you can do just about everything with those three sizes. With our future ones, we're coming out some heavier sizes because that there's a whole niche for that as well, and
Mm-hmm.
3/4 or 5/8. But it swims really good. It's got a 6-degree line tie on it too, which when you shake it, which I pretty much exclusively when I swim a jig, I'm shaking it the whole time.
Yep.
That 6-degree line tie makes it keel. So like a 30, when you shake it, it pulls it forward, not as much up. So it flares that skirt better. So it does really good with that. But we put a 3/0 BKK 2-time strong hook in it that, like I told everybody at the classic this weekend, grab it, try and bend it out. If you do, I'll give you $100. Like try it. And the amount of folks that like dang near about hurt themselves trying, it doesn't bend. And I love running heavy line and slack lining them.
Yep.
And like I feel like if you're a jig fisherman, like a heavy hook set is just a prerequisite. There's a lot of companies that make a light wire hook that
Yep.
there's a time and a place for that, and that's great. It's not us. like,
Yeah.
like we're gonna have that here soon with a couple different things that we're coming out with just to fill that gap. But like with this jig, I'm gonna put in a bush or wherever, and I'm gonna set the hook ungodly hard. And if it doesn't come flying out of the water, it's a good one. And anything under 3 pounds is coming out. like, and I don't have to worry about anything like that. But we use a 3/0 hook in the quarter and 3/8. Comes through cover a lot better. I hate giant hooks and jigs that don't need them. Like, especially in the Midwest, like I don't need something that's got a 5/0 in it. If I'm putting like a tiny menace grub on there, like I can leave it full and have a good sized jig, and I can cut it way down and have something that's super compact and good for around here just for getting bites. Like I said, flipping a jig in the Midwest anywhere is always a valid way to get a bite. And a lot of guys don't cut on them at all. I always chop on mine, and I feel like you get those pressured fish. So it just does it all. It skips good. I drag it. Like I pretty much always have it on, and I can modify it so much to do so many different things that like, if I was just going to fish one all year, which is pretty much what I fish all year, like there's times and places for everything else and I throw them all, but like just one, that's going to be it. And it's our best seller too. Like everybody's on board with it.
Well, and that's the thing. You hit the nail on the head, and like having a hook that you can put the wood to one and know for a fact, okay, that hook is not going to bend. Like that's a hard thing to find in both your swim jig market as well as even that kind of more not net like especially in the half ounce size. But if you're dealing with like a structure jig, or if you're trying to find that all around all purpose jig,
Yeah.
a lot of the times they're lacking on the hook side of things. And if
Mm-hmm.
they are a beefed up hook, then at the same time, like now you're seeing this big old 5/0 gaff that's on there that's like, okay, I don't necessarily need that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I
and I
think,
just, there's so many issues. And a lot of guys are like, well, I like the lighter wire hook because it helps if I don't get a good hook in them, which is fine. But then like, I feel like most of the time there's a time and a place where you're not going to get a good hook in them. You should probably pay better attention. Like if that's your issue,
you
like
should probably
if
look at your line. You
yeah,
should
if
probably
that's
look at
your
your
issue,
rod. Like,
yeah, like
mm,
yes, there's time they're going to eat it weird. We make a jig for that. And like sometimes that just happens. But at the end of the day, if you're not paying attention and they're eating it weird, like, and you barely get a hook set in them, you should probably pay better attention,
Yeah.
because if I get them wrapped up in that pile and I'm pulling and they're pulling and I've got a hook that is not a jig hook, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a light wire son of a bitch, like they're going to bend it out or they're going to hurt it or break it, or like the tip's going to roll. The amount of jigs on the market right now that the hook point rolls and they're not stiff enough to where, like, if I wrap one up or I get anything weird, like we do the two times BKK hooks and they're all solid. The BKKs are a stouter hook too, so like they don't roll. They're built tough. Like we haven't had any issues with them. We're running Gamakatsus, and then we found out that BKK makes a 2 times strong one, and I said, well, why wouldn't we use that? Like
Yep.
I don't care if you're worried about not setting the hook hard enough. Like then you need to get a heavier rod or you got to figure something out. Like I like that's just the way that it is. We make other jigs if you want to do that in a different way or a lighter setup. But if you want to throw a lighter setup, then like you're not throwing a true flipping jig, like, and that's what this is supposed to be for that Midwest where the water's, you can get away, like you can fish it in clean water or dirty water, but like I'm gonna swing hard regardless, like it doesn't really matter there. I'd rather jack the heck out of them and get their head turned towards me and not worry about that.
Well, and that's the thing for me. Like my favorite technique, if I'm gonna pick one, hands down, is skipping docks. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I can go and skip a boat dock, awesome. Two things come with that. Number one, a lot of times you can't use braid.
Yeah.
You're using fluorocarbon. So anytime that you're using fluorocarbon now, it's that much more important that you get them turned. And when you're using heavy fluorocarbon, you don't want that thing grinding all over everything down there. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to get sawed off every now and then. It's just how it is.
Yep.
Like Lake Okoboji, for instance, prime example. Like
Won a
when you're,
lot of money on our flipping
oh
jig.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like when you're spending time on Boji and you're skipping docks, I mean, you're hardcore skipping docks. Like it is so important to number one have the right hook. Number two, to have the right jig that you can actually skip with the right trailer. The
Mm-hmm.
trailer is the most important part for actually getting those things to skip right.
Yep.
But like you hit the nail on the head, you have to get them turned and coming towards you. It's just like if they're, regardless, if they're in between dock pylons, if they're in a brush pile out in 20, 25 foot of water, if they're on a rock pile that's got some big crevices down there that they can get into. It
Mm-hmm.
is so important to number one, get a good hook set, and number two, get them out of that area.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people actually pay attention to that it leads to issues,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, and I'll never talk bad about a product, but like one of my favorite swim jigs for a while was the Z-Man Cross-Eye because of the fact that it was flat and you could kind of put it in some areas.
Yep.
The hook on that,
Mm-hmm.
eh, we're not going to talk about the hook.
Yeah.
Like it's just how it is. Like it was a thinner wire hook that if you're straight up jacking their jaw with,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, 45 to 50 pound braid, like sorry, that ain't it, chief.
Yeah. 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 Just the initial 2 seconds of all that is so important. I'm going to hit them with everything I have, and I'm going to pull them out before they even know what happens, so that they don't have the opportunity to go under and above and around 3 times and whatever.
Yep.
Like I want to actually like confuse the heck out of them because they ate something and they're 3 feet up higher than where they were in about 2 seconds. And I get line shyness, but at the same point in time, like I want all of my jigs to where like I would rather hook them and get them out than lose 4 of them, like
Yep.
doing some stupid stuff, especially in a multi-day tournament. Because like if I go in there and I hook 5 of them the first day and I only land one, odds of me catching those other fish the next day probably aren't very good.
Yeah.
Like unless there's a huge, like I'd rather not get the bites and not burn them, and I can catch everything that I land and then go in with my little finessey stuff later on and play that game. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the light wires and jigs. And I get there's a time and we're launching some that'll have a
Yep.
lighter wire in them. But not in a flipping jig.
Yeah, no. I mean, when you're talking about like the little wizard or something more on the finesse side, if you're basically having a skirted Ned rig or something along those lines, like
Yes.
then at that point, that's where your light wire comes into play because a lot of times you're fishing out on spinning tackle or a BFS bait caster or something that is designed for that smaller tackle where you really need that penetration that you get with that
Mhm.
light wire hook versus just, oh, I'm going to put the wood to you with a 7.6
Yeah.
flipping stick.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's all diving into that combination that people need. Now, one thing that has blown me away is your guys' custom Ned rigs. Okay.
Or what?
Your Ned rigs.
Oh yeah.
The Neds have really blown me away. What hook are you guys running on that? Because
That
it's
owner.
it's sticky.
Yeah, the owners on that, and they're really good. Like you can skimp out and you can run a lot of lighter wire ones, and that one is like we
Yeah.
use it every year. We come up to where you live up in the Glacial Lakes, and we throw the heck out of it. And like we've even messed around just to see, like just for shits and giggles on that. Like we'll throw it on like 17-pound fluorocarbon on a bait caster, and like just seeing how many fish over 3 pounds we can bow flip with it, and we can't break them. Like we really like. I wouldn't tell anybody to do that, but like just for the hook's sake. But those owners are really good. The weedless ones use that Victory hook, and
Yep.
it's really good too. But for the standard Neds, yeah, it's that owner, and
Yeah.
you're
And
not
those
it.
and those weedless are that's kind of a sneaky thing that a lot of guys haven't dove into as well.
Mm,
And because that now you're talking about a medium light bait caster or a medium bait caster with an extra fast tip where you can really kind of utilize that. Like my favorite, honestly, one of my favorite Ned rig rods when I'm fishing around grass with that is actually the 7-1 mag medium light from JT. Well,
yep.
I'm running that with 12-pound test fluorocarbon and a BFS reel. And dude, your hookup ratio with Neds and that rod combo, it just goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden you're not having to deal with, oh, I'm running light line and I'm
Mm,
kind of doing the fairy wand thing out there. And I'm not much of a fairy wand person, even though I do love some finesse tactics that you can do with spinning rods and everything like that. But
yep.
like that like once that weedless Ned became kind of a thing, and there's a handful of brands that have them out there, you being one of them,
Hmm.
like, and they're not easy to get your hands on.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not kind of a widely publicized out there thing.
Yep.
So for all you walleye guys that love Ned rigging, and yeah, that's something you need to get.
Hmm. Yeah, and they're sneaky for really pressured fish too. Like there's so many different baits and plastics you can run on the back and kind of comb through those areas that a traditional Ned rig isn't going to work, and a shaky head's a different profile. Like you can kind of make it into like a finessey shaky head, or like even with a TRD, like just putting something that does nothing right in their face when they've seen so much else that's bigger. Like you said, you either go
Yep.
big or weird, or you go really small and finessey. And sometimes that, like we've got some boys in Alabama that buy a bunch of them, and they say those brush pile fish down there just don't see it. You know, you can't
Yeah,
work Ned rig.
for
Oh yeah,
spotted bass, it's a sleeper.
yep,
There's no doubt about it.
yeah, big time.
Well, brother, we have been on here for
We've
an
been chit
hour and
chatting.
25 minutes, dude. This is solid. So, on that note, what advice do you have for the fans, man? Like you're chasing the dream.
Hmm.
You're working in the fishing industry. What advice do you have for our younger anglers that are trying to get into that? They're going to college, they're in high school right now. Like how do they jump into working in the industry?
Yeah. Really just kind of being like not taking no for an answer with anything. Like I come from Nebraska. It's not a bass state. Like it's not really even, it's not a great walleye state. That's what it's kind of known for and whatnot. And it's compared to everywhere around us, it's just not, but I mean, this is what I've always wanted to do. I fished in high school, sucked, fished for the Huskers, and like had a bunch of really good guys above me. And, like coming from a state that we don't have any lakes that have a reputation other than the reputation of being bad, like you learn really quick that like you just have to put your time in and do your fortes. So like wherever you're from, like I came from nowhere. I qualified for 6 national championships and top 10 at the Natty and had a really, really good college career junk fishing my butt off. Like I did what I was good at. I didn't try to be somebody that I wasn't. I never had live scope on my boat. Like I just did what I like to do and figured it out and got really good at that. And so for the guys that don't have anything, like you can complain all you want that, well, I don't have a boat that's as nice as everybody's, or Like my Ranger out back is a heaping pile of crap. And like the first 2 tournaments I qualified for, I was in a 17-foot javelin that had trees growing out of the seats. Like
Oh man.
you could, dude, you can get it done. Like I don't care who you are. Like the excuses are a dime a dozen, and they only sound good to the people making them. Like just go out there and do your thing, work your face off, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be way harder than you would ever imagine. And it's the same way with trying to work in the industry. Everybody wants to do it, and everybody's going to tell you that it's all sunshine and rainbows, but it's hard. Like it's taken 4 or 5 years now to get this to the point where I was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm just going to push the chips in, and it's going to be a really long road there. But as long as you work harder than everyone else around you and learn everything, right, and don't take anything for granted, and just keep your face down and meet as many people as you can and do literally it's a nonstop grind to make it in this industry. But for the guys that do it and like actually keep grinding, every time it gets really hard and you go, I don't think this is going to work out, a door opens, like something else happens, you meet the right person, you make a big sale, like whatever it may be, like you just keep working and you don't quit. You can never technically lose, and that's how you make it in this industry. You look at any of the big tackle companies, nobody started and blew up in a year. Most of the companies that are huge, with the exception of a couple, and most of the ones that blow up and are huge are a flash in the pan and they'll be gone in 2 years. Like you look at all the greats and all the good ones that are around right now, it took 8 to 10 years for them to make it where they are. Like, and all the elites and all the guys coming up through the opens now, you might just be hearing about them because they're really good. But that was 10 to 15 years of nonstop on the water doing their thing. So I think it's always going to take longer than everyone tells you or you think it's going to. But I think the biggest thing is just keep your head down and shut up and just just work. And like nobody owes you anything. Just do it, So I guess that's pretty harsh, but I think the world kind of needs that right now,
I couldn't agree more,
the
man.
amount of DMs I get every day from 8 to 13-year-olds asking me to sponsor them and send them baits. Like, don't be that guy. Don't do that. Like, I get it. We talked about ROI earlier. If you don't have anything to offer me, no company that's worth their salt is going to send you anything. And just be good at fishing. Like, if you want to make it on that side of the thing, get really good and sell baits for people. Like there's a lot of guys making a lot of money right now because their platforms sell baits. And I've got no issue doing whatever you need me to do if you can sell a ton of baits, and that's why the pros do so well. But if you can't, you should probably figure out how to run a camera or make a YouTube or do something. And there's a million different avenues, but whatever it is, you got to be really good at it and you got to work your face off. And if you're not doing that, you better start.
Dude, that's the name of the game, man. It's the name of the game. I mean, no matter what, if your work, no matter what avenue your work, what your career is, what you do for a living, if you don't work hard at it, you're not going to be successful at it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the fishing industry just makes it easy for us to work hard just because of the fact that it's what we love to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel like work at that point.
Yep.
That's the big thing.
Yep. Yeah, what was that Steve Jobs quote where he said, everyone says that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's actually false. You're going to work harder than you ever imagined possible. Yeah. It just makes the tools lighter. And that's 100% it. Like, You want to work here, you got to get out every chance you get. You got to tie baits. You got to you got to do whatever you can and just do it. And do it and keep doing it. And eventually somebody's going to notice, or a lot of people are going to notice. And it's not overnight at all. There is nothing that's overnight about it. And if it is, you'll be in 1 week and you'll be out the next because it was that. And there's no way to back it, you just got to keep going, keep trying to be better and give people a reason to listen to you, that's just what it is. There's not a ton of overnight sensations in this industry, no matter what you want to think or what people try and tell you. Ben Milliken made a lot of YouTube videos before he blew up, Pig Patrol, all the guys that you see in front of the screen right now have been doing that a long time. You just have never watched any of their first videos. So
exactly. I mean, that's the thing. like now you're seeing a lot more of the pros and stuff like that start the YouTube side of things, and they've already got a following, so it's a little bit easier for them to have an impact right
Yeah.
off the bat. But I mean, dude, how many hours? Just think about this. How many hours did Ben spend, like not just in front of a camera, behind a
Yeah.
camera, behind some editing software,
Oh yeah.
just putting videos out there
Hmm.
before it was the thing to do, before it made anybody any money
Yeah.
or anything.
Yep.
The dude has worked his tail off to get where he is.
Yeah. Well, and it's never going to be pretty right off the bat. Like if you look at any of the jigs that we started selling in the beginning, like oh, like like I wouldn't show anybody that now, like, but like you got to start somewhere. So like as long as you keep going, keep improving, as long as you're improving, like whether that's every YouTube video gets better, every podcast gets better, every tournament gets a little bit better. Like you're like it's just such a learning curve, and it as long as you're going in the right direction, eventually it's going to get to the point where you hit something or you figure something out or you get really good, and then every video is really good, and then all of a sudden your growth goes from okay, I used to grow like 5 followers every post. Okay, I'm gaining 50. Okay, I'm gaining 100, and like you just see that growth, that return on investment gets substantially larger the better you get. And now like it's the same with jig sales, like, and it's just gonna keep getting better. Like everything used to be so random, and now we've got a way of like when we post this we will sell this, and right now it's small until it's not small anymore,
Yeah.
and then like it's the same way, like we send an email out, and before it used to be like, oh, we made one sale, and now it's like I sent an email yesterday and sold $500 worth of baits, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like you start doing the math, and like that number's it's just going to keep compounding. The better you get, the more people you get to believe in it. Like nobody's going to trust you and buy your stuff overnight. Like it takes a lot of time and a lot of just working to say, well, I'm not going anywhere, so
Yeah.
you might as well buy it because I've been around.
Well, the thing is like you touched on it there too, and social media definitely comes into play. And I mean, what you guys have done with your social media page is freaking incredible. I mean, what are you guys, 10,000,
Just
eleven
shy,
thousand
just shy
followers?
of 10,000. But like from where we started to now, like it's just cool. Like every reel we post, depending on what style it is, gets 10 to 40,000 views, and like it's just
Wow.
we're learning a lot, like, and just playing around with the camera, and like I finally invested in a nice camera and can do some cool stuff, and like the more you get, like we just posted, I don't know what it's at right now. We just posted something of one of our swim jigs that went viral, and it's got probably 6,000 likes and like 2,000 shares or something. Like just stuff like that. You just learn little nuances, and like I learned a bunch from that, and you pick and choose and you find your niche, and we got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe. Just like you find that one thing that works for you, and you keep doing it. Like it's been cool. It's only gonna keep getting better, and that's the thing now is like you just improvise and evolve, and as long as you keep growing and learning, like again, you can't lose, right? Like it's not like I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and be like, well, it's not working as of today. Like, you just
Yeah,
keep
like
doing it.
like oh,
So
I just don't want to do anything with fishing anymore. Like
yeah, yeah.
this sucks. Like I'm talking to a buddy of mine on a video for people to watch. Like this sucks. I'm not gonna do this anymore. This is the last episode of Angler's Perspective.
Yeah. No, it's if you really love it, it doesn't matter how much it'll take. Like you'll do whatever. And I can't tell you how many nights we slept in a truck in a parking lot and
Same.
stole power and ate nothing. Like I used to lose so much weight in the summertime because like, you just do. You don't eat during
Yeah.
tournaments and you don't take care of yourself. And like even I'm not telling anybody to do this, but like even before I went full time with this, like I moved back home, I changed everything, but like I was dropping shifts to make jigs and not working as much as I could to do stuff, and like wasn't eating right because I was putting all my money into the company, and I lost like 15 pounds because I was just eating bags of tuna, and like, dude, you just do what you have
Oof.
to make it work, like that's the real difference between the guys that are going to make it and the guys that aren't. Is like the guys that they'll try it for a couple months, and if it doesn't pan out, whatever, like it is what it is. It's not going to work. The guys that are going to make it, there's no other option, like
Yeah.
there's no choice. It's I'm going to figure out how to do this, or I'm going to be a really sorry son of a gun for a long
Yep.
time until it happens, But
Well, and that's the whole thing. Like I can count on one hand the amount of tournaments that I've gone to where I've actually like stayed at a hotel room
oh yeah,
or like was going out and actually getting something reasonably like normal to eat for
yeah,
dinner. Like the amount of ramen noodles and summer sausage that gets consumed during the summertime is absolutely ridiculous.
oh yeah.
And
I'll
if
tell
you're
you, I don't know if I've got one. I got a little secret for you. You're gonna like
oh
this.
boy.
This is a life hack for everybody, and it'll change everything. Okay. Chef Boyardee, his beef ravioli is like a
Okay.
$1.47 a can, and it stays good forever. And you just keep like 6 of them in your boat with a box of plastic forks, and you can live on it and anytime. If you keep it trapped in your
Oh my
compartments, it's
gosh.
cold when it's hot out, and it tastes good. And if you put it in the sun, it'll warm it up, and it's not too bad. But dude, and a DT16 crankbait bill is another really good alternative for a spoon. You just got to watch the hooks around your mouth.
Oh my gosh. That's gold. That is absolute gold. I
Oh,
gotta.
dude, it's the best. Anytime I've ever had a co-angler that like doesn't know me and you bust one of those out, it's a look of concern, but like they're gonna sponsor me one of these days, dude.
Dude,
I ever make it big, you're gonna see Chef Boyardee's plastered everywhere.
oh, dude, I will say this: it's a better combo than what my dad always had. It was always a can of spam and spam and a Coke, and that would be about it. Maybe a
Yep.
Gatorade here or there. I do highly recommend if you struggle to stay hydrated on the boat as much as I do, set timers for yourself and actually slow down. Have a bottle of water. It's
Yep.
okay. You can drink. You can survive. You're going to be fine. I'm
Hmm.
not saying you got to eat and take like a 15-minute lunch break or anything like that, but like,
It
yeah,
helps. It
it
definitely
does help.
helps. I can't tell you how many times I've almost passed out from
Oh,
not
yeah.
doing anything for 8 hours in the sun, and then the tournament's over, and that like adrenaline and just like the I don't know what you want to call it, the willpower kind of fades out, and you're like,
Oh, dude.
"Ooh,
So this is how bad it got on Grand. Like, I mean, I was locked in the in practice on the for the national championship. And I started running this pattern, get on some spotted bass, and it was literally just find as many schools as possible because as
Mhm.
soon as you would catch one short, that entire school would shut off. You might catch one or two good ones, and then bam, you catch a short, it's done.
Yeah,
So I'm running all the way from the dam all the way up to like Horse Creek, everywhere in between. And I know Brock's out there doing the same thing. And you can ask him this. I get back to the campsite. So Brock's staying in the campsite next to me. I've got this campsite. Eli's parked up on the front side of it. And dude, I got back, man, and I just like I was sleeping in the back seat. So I get into the back seat bed and like I'm all comfy and everything like that, and it hits me. I did not drink enough water today, and bam, there's the hamstring cramp. And dude, I
yeah,
I was flopping in the back seat like a fish. I mean, making so much dang noise. Eli came up to the side of the door and he's like, dude, he's like, I thought you were having a seizure. I'm like, no, I got a really bad cramp, dude. Like it's
I'm
not
getting
good.
real close."
Like it's bad. It's bad. I'm knocking on heaven's door right now. Little Led Zeppelin playing in the background.
Yeah, drink your water, kids.
Yeah.
Whatever, just drink
Well,
something.
on that note, I think everybody got some great advice, dude. It was great having you on,
It's
man.
good
I
talking to you,
appreciate it.
broski.
Dude, that made a great first episode.
Yeah, I think that turned out real good. But
Before you
no,
get off of here, tell everybody how they can get over to LS Lures website.
yeah, just look up LS Lures. It should be the top one. Capital L, capital S Lures. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. Check us out there, and we've got links everywhere that take you everywhere. So if you find us on one of those, you can find everything we've got.
Bingo.
But I appreciate you, buddy.
Anytime, man. Thanks for hopping on.
Yep, we'll see you.
Well, what a way to kick off Angler's Perspective. Thank you, Hunter, for hopping on here. If you guys made it all the way to the end of the video, give yourselves a round of an applause because it was a long one. We did not plan on having it go that long, but when the conversation's good and things are going well, might as well. With that being said, we want to thank our awesome sponsors. You guys saw the tags pop up on there. We want to thank Striker, JT Outdoors, Great Lakes Finesse, Bucked Up, and Okuma. Without them, this wouldn't be happening. Stay tuned next week. I've got another really exciting guest on. It's going to be a fun one. Once again, like, share, subscribe. If you guys can, I do have a project for you. Comment what your favorite jig is and what your favorite size and color. Okay, I want to take a look. Let's blow up the comments here. Okay, on that note, I will see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.